is the curvature? Where?
How about the core of the Earth? We all learned about it. We all saw these images, right? They're in every textbook. It's a fact. We know what the core of the Earth is, correct? why don't you go look up what's the furthest we've ever dug? 8 miles. 8 miles.
If you want to say this is what the first 8 miles looks like, I will believe you, because they can show me the hole. This goes 8 miles down, okay? But they can't go any farther. It doesn't work. So it's speculation.
So, over here at the window, you'll see it looks like normal windows. You would think we'd be able to open this up and see right outside to our patio or our porch. But instead, you will actually see 250 miles below us is the spinning ball Earth. Yes, it's true. Many people didn't know that I actually live on an orbiting space station. And this video is absolute proof. This is all the proof you need. It's open and shut. You're an idiot if you don't believe it. I did this with a 99-cent green poster board. And people want to tell me that they know that the ISS is real because they see it on TV.
Based on my research for the past 10 months, our world is very different from the model that we are being taught by the authority on the matter. Once you start digging into this, it becomes clear that there is no evidence for the speculated spinning ball that we supposedly live on, and everything points to a flat Earth. The flat Earth is much more than just reasonable. The one and only reason that it's reasonable to argue against the flat Earth is that we've all been taught otherwise our whole lives. We blindly believe something that A, has never been proven, and B, is pretty much fucking impossible. We have no real pictures of the Earth, and no matter how hard we try, we just can't find the curvature. Despite what you hear, flat earthers aren't anti-science at all. We just don't condone what mainstream science has become. And that's a faith-based religion swarming with lies and ludicrous theories that have never been proven. Also, this re-emergence of the flat earth has little to do with the Flat Earth Society. If you have the desire to further look into this, don't check for answers on their website. Some of the claims made by the Flat Earth Society are decent, while others are absurd. This is a common ploy to encourage no further investigation by the controlled opposition known as the Flat Earth Society.
Well, there's a Flat Earth Society that's been in existence since 1970, and that really is a joke. It's a controlled opposition organization that was created by a Freemason to make it seem that they mix truth with lies and satire, so that anybody that approaches the flat earth subject is met with some false flat earth arguments and a bunch of jokes, basically. So they're kind of left with the idea that the whole thing is a joke. I said they mix in a bunch of false flat earth arguments so that anybody who, is interested in checking out this idea of a flat earth will instantly come upon the Flat Earth Society's material, and they'll read some of the things and instantly be turned off. For instance, they claim that gravity exists, but the flat Earth disk is constantly rising upwards, accelerating at 9.8 meters per second, and they claim that is the reason for the effect of gravity. Of course, this is ridiculous, a clearly false argument to make flat Earth research look silly, because if the Earth was constantly rising up like that, then it would crash into planes and helicopters. Easily proven incorrect, and they purposely use the easily proven incorrect arguments so that genuine people looking into the flat earth will be deterred from looking any further, because it seems like such nonsense when you read these nonsense arguments.
I mean, think about how they made everybody feel like it was stupid to even consider the earth would be flat after they supposedly made their discoveries, Copernicus and all this, right? After all these discoveries are made, that there's no way it could be flat, and anybody who thinks that is stupid.
In my efforts to try to prove the globe, it's falling apart with horizon tests and seeing things that we shouldn't be able to see. If the ball is real, the math shows that with the curvature, there are things we should not be able to see, and yet people are seeing it. So that has me really questioning the globe, and I don't question the math, because that math came from globalists. It came from people who believe the globe. So it's not math conjured up by flat earthers. On a good day, on a clear day, we could look out and see the Anacapa Arch. Well, the Anacapa Arch is almost 20 miles away, and it's only 40 feet high. So the math says that if we're on a ball, 25,000 mile circumference ball, that the top of that 40-foot island arch should be over 200 feet below our ability to see it on the other side of the curve.
There's no evidence for curvature when you use your own senses and your own observations. Does anybody know who hasn't studied it? Because I certainly didn't know when I was a globe believer what the equation for the curvature of the Earth should be. Does anybody even know the radius of the Earth or the diameter? That isn't a flat Earth we're saying, as I didn't know. But it should be common knowledge, shouldn't it? Shouldn't engineers, sailors, pilots, astronauts, you know, all of these professions, architects, they should all know how much the Earth curves. If they're building a rail line over 30 or 100 miles or 200, however long it is, or a canal, or all these kind of things, they should know. It should be a common knowledge thing like E equals mc squared. We don't use it every day, but everyone knows E equals mc squared. The Earth curves, it should be common knowledge. This is how you know the Earth curves for sure. The radius of the Earth is 3,959 miles, allegedly. That's the figure that's given us. Using professional AutoCAD program and Pythagorean trigonometry, it actually comes out to 7.992 inches per mile of distance squared.
You know how you can check? There's a measurement. There's a measurement to measure the curve. It's supposed to drop 8 inches per mile, and you have to square the mile. So the first mile, you should feel 8 inches of curvature drop, or you should be able to measure 8 inches of curvature drop. The second mile, now you have to square the mile. So you got 2 times 2, which is 4, times 8, which is 32. So that's 32 inches. The next mile has to drop. And this continues. And at 50 miles, we're at 1,667 feet of drop and curvature. We can see things 50 miles away.
37 miles away, so be behind 900 feet of curve. The CN Tower is 1,800 feet tall. You should be able to see only the top half of that and hardly any of the rest of Toronto. Can we see pretty much the whole skyline there? The Statue of Liberty stands 326 feet tall. It can be seen from 60 miles away, but it should be behind 2,000 feet of curve.
There's a serious fraud going on right now in every space agency worldwide. And it's time human beings turn off the TV, stop believing CGI, and ask yourself, how come we can't see the Earth in its total global form, as purported allegedly, through scientists, pundits, experts, for centuries? With the camera technology and aerospace technology of today, we cannot have 24-hour surveillance of the weather patterns at a distance forming in the skies of our Earth as a ball.
81 miles away from Genoa, it's the Isle of Gorgona. It's only 70 feet above sea level. I'm not entirely sure how high we are. We should be able to see anyone, or we should be able to see the tip. We can see most of the island. It should be behind 4,300 feet of curve. It should have curved away by now. We can still see it.
The natural physics of water is to find and maintain its level. If Earth were a giant sphere tilted, wobbling, and hurtling through infinite space, then truly flat, consistently level surfaces would not exist here. But since Earth is in fact an extended flat plane, this fundamental physical property of fluids finding and remaining level is consistent with experience and common sense.
Parallax conducted many experiments, all towards one conclusion: to prove that the surface of the water in the canal was indeed perfectly flat. In one experiment, a boat carrying a flag rowed from one bridge to another 6 miles away. An observer with a telescope placed 8 inches above the surface of the water found that the flag and the boat were distinctly visible throughout the entire distance. If the Earth is a sphere with a circumference of 25,000 miles, then over a distance of 6 miles, the second bridge should mathematically be 16 feet below the observer's eye line.
So when I heard about that experiment by Parallax in England, who used a flat 6-mile surface, floated a boat down there 6 miles, put a telescope 8 inches out of the water, 8 inches, and saw the entire boat 6 miles down when it should have been over the horizon, then you got to think what's up. All right? The water wasn't dipped in the middle and came up like this. Water doesn't do that. Water's flat, people. Whatever container you put it in, water's going to become flat unless you keep shaking it.
If the Earth bends the water into a sphere around it, then if it was to freeze suddenly, we should detect a hump in the water, shouldn't we? So why is it that when Lake Baikal in Siberia freezes over, it is one of the flattest places on Earth, despite being 395 miles long and 49 miles wide? There should be a hump in the middle of it, nearly 20 miles high. So why haven't we ever seen curved water? Apparently we see a horizon about 5 miles away. So in 5 miles there's enough curvature to see a ship disappear. Yet I cannot detect that curve over 10 miles, because I can see 5 miles to my left and 5 miles to my right, so I've got an uninterrupted 10-mile span in which I should see enough curve to hide 2 ships, but I don't. So if I see enough curve over 5 miles, why don't I see it over 10 miles?
The Earth isn't flat.
The resurgence of the flat Earth is not merely a handful of tinfoil hat-wearing crazies who lack intelligence and teeth. This is a shift in consciousness by ordinary people who have started to re-examine the lies they were told as a child.
Rivers run down to sea level, finding the easiest course, north, south, east, west, and all other intermediary directions over the Earth at the same time. If Earth were truly a spinning ball, then many of these rivers would be impossibly flowing uphill. For example, the Mississippi in its 3,000 miles would have to ascend 11 miles before reaching the Gulf of Mexico.
Some other examples include the base of the Isle of Wight, where water and land meet, forming a perfectly straight line 22 statute miles long. On the ball Earth, the Isle of Wight should decline 80 feet from the center on each side to conform to the curvature. However, the crosshairs of good theodolites have repeatedly shown the waterline to be perfectly level. And on a clear day from the highland near Douglas Harbour on the Isle of Man, the whole length of the coast of North Wales is often plainly visible to the naked eye. The 50-mile stretch has also repeatedly been found to be horizontal. On the ball Earth, however, the 50-mile Welsh coast would decline from the center a stark 416 feet on either side. The Dunkirk light in southern France at 194 feet is visible from a boat approximately 10 feet above sea level, from 28 miles away. At this distance on the ball Earth, the light should be hidden behind 190 feet of curvature. The light at Cape Bonavista, Newfoundland is 150 feet above sea level and visible from 35 miles, where it should be below 490 feet of curvature. The lighthouse steeple of St. Botolph's Parish Church in Boston is 290 feet tall and visible from over 40 miles, where it should be hidden below a full 800 feet of curvature. The Isle of Wight Lighthouse in England is 180 feet high and can be seen up to 42 miles away, where it should be below 996 feet of curvature. The Cape Lagulias Lighthouse in South Africa is 33 feet high, 238 feet above sea level, and can be seen for over 50 miles, where it should be below 1,400 feet of curvature. The lighthouse at Port Said in Egypt, at an elevation of only 60 feet, has been seen an astonishing 58 miles away, where it should be below 2,182 feet of curvature.
One sort of other proof is there's a place in Bolivia called Salar de Uyuni, which is a salt flat. It's literally 100 miles wide one way and 80 miles across, and it's perfectly flat. When it rains, literally you get an inch of water, and it looks like a perfect mirror. Now, how does that happen on a sphere? Yeah, it shows you that, you know, if you're one end of this salt flat, you can see perfectly clearly the other end 100 miles away.
Here's the question you got to ask yourself, okay? And this is pretty serious, okay? If all these accomplishments of going to Mars, landing on Mars, which is fake, landing on the moon, which is fake, all this stuff, okay, that they say is real, that you believe, okay? Why are there flaws? Why are it's all fake? They're paintings, CGI. Why do one of them? Okay, on the moon. Why have one if it's the greatest accomplishment of mankind? They should be throwing out pictures all the time. We haven't gotten a recent picture in years. Why not?
2,000 years ago, an Egyptian scholar by the name of Eratosthenes performed an experiment that he claimed proved the Earth to be a sphere. However, there are serious doubts about the accuracy of his data and his scientific procedures. Dr. Leo Ferrari explains.
Oh, the Eratosthenes experiment is an experiment supposedly conducted in the 1st century, whereby this ingenious person was supposed to have proved, I say that in quotes, that the Earth was a sphere of some 4,000 miles radius. Eratosthenes one day noticed that the sun was directly overhead in Syene, whereas he noticed that on the same day, at the same time, the sun made an angle of 7.2 degrees to the vertical at Alexandria, which was some 530 miles away. How did Eratosthenes in the 1st century know what the sun was doing on the same day in two places which are 530 miles apart? One can take all those same data, knowing that the Earth is flat. One place you have the sun directly overhead, and at another place, at the same time, at 530 miles away, let us suppose that it does make an angle of 7.2 degrees to the vertical. Then we have a right-angled triangle, which it can be easily shown the sun is some 4,000 miles up in the sky. These superficial, even, considerations show that it's impossible. The whole thing, it's a story, a fairy story made up and mindlessly repeated in textbooks.
Put an end to this topic once and for all, turn the Hubble round and show us Earth in real time, zooming in onto a place so that we can see what's happening at that place, and we know that there is something up there looking down on us from space. But they will not do it. They can't do it. It can't. It doesn't exist. It literally doesn't exist. It's all fraud. It's all fake. Pretty much everything NASA puts out is fraudulent.
We are going to go to LROC. Now let's go to this post that's from the same website. It's called Looking Over the Limb. And NASA claims this photo is real. So okay, let's scroll to the bottom where you can download the original TIFF file. Now let's open it in Photoshop, bring the levels up, and boom, clear as day, Photoshop job. Not even a question. This is indisputable. NASA's images are all fake. It's been proven over and over at this point and beat to death. But unfortunately, many people still blindly give their trust to NASA and the other space programs of the world, which are all fraudulent as well.
Now people will say, well, you can't be thinking that the Earth is flat because people, they fly around it. They take boats around it. Yeah, we know, like Magellan. And people like NASA love to throw these things right in our face. For instance, this is the NASA-designed Magellan mission patch. Notice anything weird about it? It's a boat that goes in a circle. Do you see that? Is it going around a globe? Or is it making a circle around a flat disc?
The sailor thinks that he's traveling around the Earth this way, when in effect he's traveling around the Earth this way. And he's creating a circle. He's moving in a continuous direction around. He goes through the various parts of the circle, and he comes back where he started from, sort of around this way.
Does running round your neighborhood prove that the neighborhood is round?
People say, well, go look at the planets. The planets are spheres, so that means we're a sphere. No. Whip out a telescope. I've got one. Whip out your telescope and look at Mars. It's a dot of light. It's an orange dot. And then when you look at a NASA image, it's this desert world with canyons and ice and craters. It's an orange dot. It's not a desert world with canyons and shit that they went to.
To say that Earth must be a sphere because other things look like they might be spheres is foolish. There is Earth, what we are on, teeming with life and providing us with what we need to be able to sustain or destroy. To build civilizations on a vast flat surface where large bodies of water are incapable of curving. Earth, where curvature and motion cannot be detected. And then there's other celestial bodies that aren't teeming with life, and we really don't know what they are or what they look like up close.
So people who believe in the globe Earth like to say, the sun and the moon and all the planets are spheres. You can just tell by looking at them, they're spheres. So what makes you think Earth is flat and not a sphere? This in my hand is a sphere, right? Oops. But it's not. So how the fuck do you know the moon isn't just a half sphere or the sun isn't just a half sphere? How do you know when you're looking at the sun, it isn't that on the other side? You don't! You ever seen the other side of the sun? No, you haven't. You haven't ever seen the other side of any of those fucking things. This just proves if you can't see the back of something, you don't know what the fuck it is.
It's a fallacy to say, well, everything else out there is spherical, so we must be. You know, how this is special. You know, so why? It's like saying a basketball is round, so why isn't the court round? You know, it's a fallacy.
Spherical Earth paradigm is coming to an end. There is no curve to be found or measured. And there's hints sprinkled all over the place, like this popular study, for instance. A study conducted by Department of Geography, Texas State University, and Department of Geography, Arizona State University, concludes that the state of Kansas is flatter than a pancake. On a scale where 1.0 means perfect flatness, the calculated flatness of the pancake is approximately 0.957. That's pretty flat, but Kansas is 0.9997 flat over its length of 400 miles, a distance that should render 20 miles of curvature from one side to the other on a sphere that's 25,000 miles in circumference.
In 2003, researchers did the measurements and found that Kansas is in fact literally flatter than a pancake. Of course, the Earth is not flat, the Earth is round. Otherwise, travelers would be falling off the edge all the time.
Perspective of living on a globe is preposterous, it's ridiculous, it's hilarious. How we are taught to perceive the world we live on, because basically, even when trying to depict it, it's hilarious. They have no way of depicting it without it being comical. You have whales climbing the curve, like, I mean, okay, let's just say gravity is holding the water in the well in the water. What is assisting him to climb? Is gravity doing that too?
If you walked on the moon, we're given the opportunity to swear to God that you walked on the moon.
I'm going to give you the opportunity to get the hell knocked out of you if you don't leave me alone.
So why don't you just put the end to the record in the argument and put your hand on the Bible, swear to God you walked on the moon.
Mr. Several, knowing you, that's probably a fake Bible.
Well, you're talking to the wrong guy. Why don't you talk to the administrator at NASA? We're passengers. We're guys going on a flight.
I don't hit people, but you're going to be on the deck unless you get...
I'm heading out. I appreciate it.
And get the hell out of the house.
Well, I take your stuff and get the fuck out. Mr. Seibel, you do not deserve answers.
You're the one who said you walked on the moon when you didn't. Calling the kettle black if I ever thought of it. Saying I misrepresented myself.
Away from me.
You're a coward and a liar and a thief.
If you show this publicly, you're open for a lawsuit. Okay?
This is the universe. And
Complete universe.
Yes, this system is the
Is
complete
everything.
Is everything. Everything that NASA has put out is CGI, is fake.
We don't have a picture of our Earth, except for the nice composite fake images NASA gives you to make sure you keep believing you're in a ball and keep arguing on their behalf, keep fighting for them, keep telling people we went to the moon, simply because you can't let your mind think of the possibility that someone lied to you. The government lied to you. They can't lie. They're my government. Believe me, it's hard for all of us.
That's crazy. The government doesn't lie to people.
We don't have time for a meeting of the Flat Earth Society.
You went up on top of your house and saw the curvature. You went on a plane and saw the curvature. No, you didn't. There is no curvature. Go try and fucking measure it. You have to measure it on water, okay? Try and measure it on a long canal. Try and measure it on sea. Use a laser level. Take a really, really long piece of rope. Do whatever you gotta do to try to measure this supposed curvature and film it. And then post it. And if your curvature is real, well then all us flat earthers will look stupid, huh? So show me your homegrown experiments, because our homegrown experiments, like the Bedford level experiment, they show a flat earth every single time. There is no curvature. You know how I know? I tried to debunk the flat earth and I failed. That's how most of us get started. We try to debunk the flat earth and we fail.
The Felix Baumgartner Red Bull Dive outside camera shows the same amount of curvature of Earth from surface level to jump height, proving it to be a deceiving fish-eyed wide-angle lens, while the inside regular camera shows a perfectly flat horizon eye level at 128,000 feet, which is only consistent with a flat plane. Some people claim to have seen the curvature of the Earth out their airplane windows. The glass used in all commercial airplanes, however, is curved to remain flush with the fuselage. This creates a slight effect mixed with the confirmation bias people mistake for being the alleged curvature of the Earth. In actuality, the fact that you see the horizon at eye level at 35,000 feet out both port and starboard windows proves the Earth is flat.
We know intuitively if we stand on a beach with a panoramic view that the sea is flat. It's flat at sea level, it's flat from the top of Mount Everest, it's flat from over 20 miles high.
From Anchorage, Alaska, on a clear day, at an elevation of 102 feet, Mount Foraker can be seen by the naked eye. At 120 miles away, the summit should be leaning away from the observer and hidden by 7,719 feet of ball earth, when in reality the entire mountain, from base to summit, can be seen standing upright. Another example from Anchorage, Alaska is Mount McKinley. At 130 miles away on the ball earth, the 20,320-foot summit should be leaning away from the observer and almost half covered by 9,220 feet of curved earth. But just like Mount Foraker, Mount McKinley is always seen standing straight up and visible from base to summit. Also from Genoa, the island of Corsica can often be seen at 99 miles away. On the ball earth, Corsica should be hidden behind 5,245 feet, almost a mile of curvature. A third instance from Genoa is the island of Capraia. At 102 miles away, on the ball earth, Capraia should be hidden behind 5,605 feet. That's over a mile of curvature.
And here's the furthest one I've found so far. This is my record so far. I'm sure it'll keep on growing. This is the reunion island from the Isle of Mauritius. It's 149 miles away. It's a long, long, long way away. And once again, we can see the peak, but we can also see most of the West Island. This is quite clearly a very, very good observational day. Very clear, very calm. The highest peak on Reunion Island is 3,072 meters tall. It's just under 2 miles. 149 miles away, everything should be behind 2.8 miles of curvature. Should have curved way, way away. And again, it's not just the tops we can see much more, we can see a lot more.
The Suez Canal, connecting the Mediterranean with the Red Sea, is 100 miles long without any locks, making the water an uninterrupted continuation of the two seas. When constructed, the Earth's supposed curvature was not taken into account. It was dug along a horizontal datum line, 26 feet below sea level, passing through several lakes from one sea to the other, with the datum line and the water's surface running perfectly parallel over the 100 miles. Surveyors, engineers, and architects are never required to factor the supposed curvature of the Earth into their projects. Canals, railways, bridges, and tunnels, for example, are always cut and laid horizontally, often over hundreds of miles without any allowance for curvature. Engineer W. Winkler was published in the Earth Review regarding the Earth's supposed curvature, stating, "As an engineer of many years' standing, I saw that this absurd allowance is only permitted in school books. No engineer would dream of allowing anything of the kind. I have projected many miles of railways and many more of canals, and the allowance has not even been thought of, much less allowed for. This allowance for curvature means this, that it is 8 inches for the first mile of a canal and increasing at the ratio by the square of the distance in miles. Thus a small navigable canal for boats, say 30 miles long, will have, by the above rule, an allowance for curvature of 600 feet. Think of that, and then please credit engineers as not being quite such fools. Nothing of the sort is allowed."
The Verrazano Narrows Bridge connecting Staten Island and Brooklyn had to be designed with Earth's roundness in mind. Its two towers, separated by 1,300 meters and perfectly vertical, are nonetheless 41 millimeters further apart at the top than at the bottom because of Earth's curvature.
They got us to ridicule it, and that was the genius in their whole plan. If you ridicule something socially, it's ridiculous, so I'm not going to look into it. When if you're thinking about it, if you flip it inside out, to assume the Earth is flat makes so much sense. To assume it's a globe is so ridiculous. We should have laughed at that, you know? It's just hilarious, the fact that you convince people they live on a ball. This is absurd. We don't live on a ball. We live on a plane. And it's funny how people who still believe in the sphere always make fun of the flat Earth, because they'll say, well, how can I stay on? I'll fall off. I mean, that's ridiculous. I'll fall off. Yet they have total faith in not tumbling down the sphere. For some reason, this appears safe to them.
You can see the curvature of the Earth when the ships disappear over the horizon. No, when it disappears from your eyesight, you simply use a telescope and you can bring it back into view completely, whole mass and all.
You know, the horizon is not the curvature of the ball Earth. The horizon is just the vanishing line of perspective from your point of view. You can use a telescope or binoculars and zoom in on the horizon, and something that's been completely disappeared beyond the horizon, like a ship, can come all the way back into view, proving that that is not the curvature of the Earth you're looking at, as they tell you, but it's just the vanishing line of perspective from your point of view. And they used to, and they still use that as a proof of the ball Earth. They say that ships going away, as you see their hulls disappear before the masthead because they're going over the curvature of the Earth. Yet we've got technology now to prove that that's wrong, but they'll still keep saying it. I put it in my videos. I'll put it right here. I'll put it in this video of me talking about this right now. You may be watching this on YouTube. You're watching a horizon shot, seeing a boat that was out of view. Now it's completely into view, so you can see that that is not the curvature of the ball Earth, but there will still be 50 people in the comments section saying that that's the curvature of the ball Earth.
We know the Earth is round by observing it closely. If you watch a ship as it disappears over the horizon, the bottom will vanish first, and then the top disappears later. It looks like it's sinking, kind of. That's because the Earth is curved.
And you know what? They say you're lying. I say go to the fucking beach and take your telescope, watch a boat disappear with your eye, whip out your telescope and fucking look at it. I'm tired of the same old arguments. Boats over the horizon? Bullshit. Whip out your telescope and you'll see it.
No. There's no measurable curvature. The Earth is flat.
Until I found this photo. This is from Joshua Nowicki, and what you're seeing here is a mirage. We typically would not be able to see this from the Lake Michigan shore. We talked about this last night. Conditions are right on the lake that we're actually seeing a mirage of the Chicago skyline.
Oh, really?
That's the Chicago skyline 50 miles away across Lake Michigan. That's no fucking mirage. That's your eyes seeing what's really there. They're explaining away what your eyes see. They want to tell you it's a mirage. Look up a superior mirage. It's an inverted image. You'll see a ship inverted over the top of a ship, or a ship floating way above the ground. It'll look like a fucking mirage. Have you ever seen a mirage, like water disappearing off in the distance? It looks like a mirage. The Chicago skyline doesn't look like a mirage across Lake Michigan on a clear day. You can see it with your eyes. And you know what the globe earthers say? Refraction. It's refraction. Or another one, it's mirage. Everything's a mirage or a refraction, right? So you just throw away your eyes. Your eyes are wrong.
First thing I would want to ask is, if we live on a flat plane, would there even be a horizon? And the answer to this question is absolutely yes. Of course there would be a horizon. So many of the so-called debunkers of the flat earth theory, including the guy in that video, The Top 10 Ways We Know the Earth is Round, they say that on a flat plane there would be no horizon and that you would be able to see infinitely.
The simple fact is, if the Earth were flat, there wouldn't be a horizon beyond which things could disappear. So from across Lake Michigan, you'd be able to see all of Chicago, as well as the Rocky Mountains.
But this is silly nonsense. A simple Google search should be able to clear this up beyond a shadow of a doubt. So for all you non-believers out there who say there would not be a horizon on a flat plane, let's go to this website called askamathematician.com and see what they have to say. Question: if the Earth was flat, would there be a horizon? If so, what would it look like? If the Earth was flat and had infinite area, would that change the answer? Answered by a physicist. There'd definitely still be a horizon if the Earth were flat. In fact, mathematically, you can make the argument that a flat Earth acts the same as an infinitely big Earth. So basically what they're saying is the horizon on an infinite flat plane would work the exact same way as it does on a ball with the radius of 3,959 miles. You wouldn't be able to tell the difference. It works the exact same way. So let's begin by looking at this perspective diagram. As you can see, all these horizontal parallel lines all converge at the vanishing point on the horizon as they get further away from the observer. So the lines that are below us appear to go up in the frame as they get further away, and the lines that are above us appear to go down in the frame as they get further away. This is similar to what it would look like if you were looking down a long hallway. When you look at this picture of a hallway, we know that both the walls are parallel with one another, and we know that the floor and the ceiling are also parallel with each other, but our eyes do not see them that way. Our eyes converge them all at the horizon. So this is a first-person perspective. Okay, you are the observer in this picture. But let's take a look at what this would look like from a side angle. All the horizontal lines that are visually parallel, they all visually intersect at the horizon. Okay, so it forms a right triangle here, with the horizontal line being at eye level, and the hypotenuse is the ground. It appears to go up to the vanishing point, to the horizon, which is right here. So we know that all these horizontal lines converge at the horizon, and they will radiate out of the horizon. All these radiating lines are actually parallel, but our eyes don't see them that way. So a lot of these flat earth debunkers, they make side view illustrations that show these horizontal lines parallel, like this, when they should be making their illustrations like this. The higher up the horizontal parallel line, the steeper the angle at which it converges at the horizon. Okay? So notice how we have a red solid line as the ground. You can't see through the ground. The ground is a true limit. So these radiating lines here, they stop at the ground. But in an upwards direction, all these horizontal parallel lines radiating out of the horizon, they continue to go. There's no limit in an upward direction. That's why I've continued these lines. So the higher up the parallel horizontal line, the steeper it converges at the horizon, at the vanishing point. Now we know all the horizontal lines converge at the horizon, including the ground. Now I've continued the ground in this illustration so that I can make a point. Because if these lines are all converging after the horizon, let's pretend like they diverge, right? Theoretically. So I've continued the ground. Now if there was a boat sailing away from Cash, when it's closer, he's going to be looking slightly down to see it. And as it gets further away, he needs to look a little further up, and a little further up, and then a little further up. When the boat gets the same distance away from the observer as the distance to the horizon is, Cash will be looking 0 degrees, completely horizontal and parallel with the ground. He'll be looking straight ahead. Now what if the boat gets a further distance away from the observer than the distance to the horizon? What if the boat got to here? Well, now Cash would have to look in an upwards direction to see something that we know is below him. It's not possible. It doesn't work. Now you can only see the face of the ground up until your horizon. You can't see the face of the ground past the horizon. Okay? Cash can't see the ground from here to here, but he can see things that are above the ground for a little bit past the horizon. That's another function. The higher an object is above the ground, the further you can see it past the horizon, but you can't see the ground past the horizon. So if the boat was a little bit past the horizon, but had about 10, 20 feet of height on these sails, this is what Cash would see. Now if the boat got even further away, Cash would have to look at an even greater upwards angle to see something that is below him. And at this point, that ship's not even possible to see. This is what Cash would see. Nothing. It's past the horizon. The horizon is a set distance away. So why do we see the bottoms of the buildings obscured by the horizon in this picture? We know that the distance to the horizon is an actual set distance. So let's say the distance to this horizon is 3.1 miles. Now let's also say the distance to this island with the city skyline is also exactly 3.1 miles away. Well, if this were the case, because we could see the face of the ground all the way to the horizon, we'll be able to see the beginning of the shoreline of this island. But if the horizon is 3.1 miles away, what if the island was 4 miles away? Well, what's going to happen is it's going to appear to be a little smaller, but it's also going to start bottoming out because you can only see the face of the ground up until your horizon. You can't see the ground past your horizon. So now let's say the island was 4.5 miles away. What would happen? Well, it would continue to look smaller, but it would also bottom out. And as the island was further away from you, it would bottom out until all you can see are the tops of the buildings, and eventually you won't be able to see anything. Now, if you were to zoom in on a horizon, you're not going to be able to see the ground any further past your horizon. All you're going to do is magnify the things that you could already see to make them appear bigger and clearer. So I'll repeat. Zooming in with a camera or zooming in with binoculars or a telescope does not allow you to see further in a horizontal parallel direction with the ground. All you'll be doing is zooming in on your already existent horizon, making things bigger and making things clearer. It does not allow you to see further. Now this kind of obstruction would happen on a ball and a flat plane, but there would be one big difference. On a ball, the further away the observer was, the more these buildings would appear to be leaning over. Because your local location on Earth is always on top of the ball. You always feel upright.
The vertical perspective never changes. I mean, if it's going over the curve of a ball away from you, then the vertical perspective should indicate that. The top of the ship should start to lean away from you. The mast has to have the vertical perspective. If the hull has disappeared, and some of these ships are pretty big, I mean, you're talking like 30, 40 feet or so are disappearing. So, I mean, if that much is being hid by an alleged curve, then that much of a leaning away needs to be evident in the visual perspective, but the vertical perspective never changes.
So if the observer was, say, 50 miles away from these buildings, the buildings are going to have a slight tilt to them. They're not going to appear vertical and parallel. That's the big difference between perspective on a ball and perspective on a plane. We never see these buildings tilting over. We never see a boat tilt over. We just see them bottom out, but they remain completely vertical. The only other real difference between perspective on a ball and perspective on a plane is that on a ball, the higher up you go, the further down you would have to look to see your horizon. The horizon would fall, or it would appear to fall, as you went up. On an infinite flat plane, however, the horizon is always going to remain at your eye level. And in reality, we know that the horizon always remains at eye level. So reality matches up with the perspective optics of a flat plane, and it does not match up with the perspective optics of a round ball.
No matter where you are above the surface of the Earth, the horizon always rises to your eye level. Doesn't matter if you're standing on a beach, or up a hill, or in a plane at 35,000 feet, the horizon is always at eye level. Well, that would be impossible on a spherical Earth, because the Earth would curve away from you, and so it would always appear below you. As on this diagram, the expected horizon would be below you, but that's not what you see. When you look out of a plane window, you always see the horizon at eye level. And it doesn't matter how big you make the Earth below the plane, the horizon would always appear below you.
Learning perspective really is the most important thing to realize you live on a flat plane. So many of my commenters and so many of my globe Earth defenders, they don't understand perspective. They all think they do, but they don't. They understand size perspective, that objects appear to get smaller as they get further away, but they don't understand horizons at all. So many of my commenters actually say that there would not be a horizon on a flat plane. Once you say that, the argument is over. They don't teach you perspective in schools. The only people that learn perspective are artists and like architects. They don't teach this to the common person. Why do you think that is? They don't want you to understand how your senses work. They want to keep you as dumbed down and as uninformed as humanly possible. This makes it easier to control you. They want you to deny your own senses, deny all common sense, and then put your faith in them. Trust them. Trust the experts. They know better. They're smarter than you. You're dumb. They're smart. Trust them. The Matrix relies on this type of thinking. They don't want people to be able to critically think for themselves.
If I say that the world is round and someone else says it's flat, that's worth reporting. But you might also want to report on a bunch of scientific evidence that seems to support the notion that the world is round.